steps up with that data finesse, selling it right, no room for a guess. The mics are hot, the beats hit hard, fans throw their hands high in the yard.
Wow, I really appreciate that. Round of applause, please, for David Maldo of Let's Do Video. And please welcome our special guest, Jonah Goodhart, founder, CEO of Mobian.
Excited to be here. Thanks, guys.
Nice. What a wait with the applause. So, Gareth, Jonah, you're meeting for the first time?
We are.
Gareth is founder, CEO of Gamera.
Yeah, and I've been hearing about Jonah my whole career. So, like, literally, the entire time I've been in AdTech, I've been hearing the name Jonah Goodhart. So, no pressure, Jonah. But it's very exciting for me. This is like meeting, like, my version of, I don't know, like, AC/DC, like, the Rolling Stones. This is mine.
I know we identify with each other with our black T-shirts and our bald heads. So, excited to meet you and spend time.
We're both Jonah wannabes, or Jonah-bees, as I call them, because you're
It was off the cuff. That was good.
I should disclaimer, of course, Jonah is a Chalice investor, though I didn't pitch Jonah on the investment. It was original Chalice co-founder Ken Rona who knew Jonah from back in the day. I got that investment, but I'm very proud to call Jonah an investor and mentor. I think Jonah is the coolest. I was thinking about it, why I think Jonah's the coolest, and I thought maybe it's because by the time I met him, he'd already done 2 exits, whereas there's a lot of other people I met when they were startup hustlers, and almost no one knew Jonah in his startup hustler days because he was in college. So everyone knows him as something past being the board member of Right Media, which exited to Yahoo, and the founder CEO of Moat, which sold to Oracle for an astronomical price tag, which is a big part of Jonah's reputation for being a leader among ad tech founders, but there's also just his popularity. Everyone loves Jonah. So my first question is, Jonah, why does everyone like you so much?
I don't know. I don't think everyone likes me, but I'll tell you that the thing that I love about the industry is that the people in advertising are just good people on balance, is what I've found. And after we sold to Oracle, I got exposed to a bunch of other industries. And I spent some time looking at other businesses, and leaving, I stayed just over 2 years, just under 3 years, I guess, at Oracle, and started working on a new business. And one of the new businesses that we worked on prior to launching Mobian was a healthcare company. And I went and spent a bunch of time in the healthcare industry, and I went and met with people, and I went to conferences. And I will just say that the people are very interesting, but very different from advertising people. And so I think that each industry has its own vibe, and I like the vibe of our industry. I think on balance, we don't take ourselves that seriously. We know that we are not curing cancer here for the most part, but we know that we play an important role, and I think we're always generally overlooked. I think people love to sort of say, like, yeah, and then there's ads. And of course, ads fund everything. By and large, they fund the entire internet. They fund Meta doesn't exist without ads. Therefore, Llama 3 doesn't exist, and their innovations without ads. And so ads are a critical component of the industry, but I think it's not the sexy thing for people to focus on. And so I think our industry gets overlooked. And so as a result, if you choose to be in this industry, you kind of come in knowing that when you say to someone, I'm in advertising, you're going to get like, oh, nice. Advertising.
Yeah. You follow me around the internet.
I hate it. You get that kind of response from people. But then the fun part, I think, is that I love advertising, and I think advertising is storytelling. And I actually think storytelling is kind of the core of humanity. It's how we teach our kids, as an example. I have 4 little kids, not that little anymore, from 10 to 14. But I have 4 kids, and we teach through stories, and we teach through sort of inspiration and aspiration, and that is advertising. It's just paid advertising is that, but with paid distribution, I guess.
Yeah, I was thinking about that in context of AI when I was on a panel yesterday, and the topic was storytelling. And one of the reasons AI is so complicated an area of advertising to work in is that the AI optimization is always finding things that don't fit in the story and that can't be conveyed in a story. And in fact, the reason they're better at optimizing is that they're not influenced by stories. They're not biased by what you'd think, and they're looking at much more data. That they're not hobbled by the way we are, that we could only understand things as a story. And it's just one of the more surprising and confusing things I've found is that when you try to describe what AI optimization is, like you're kind of at a loss because it finds all these inhuman differences.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's sometimes you can figure out how that makes sense in the end of the day, and perhaps it's just a signal you weren't looking at. So, for example, you might find, and I totally agree with you that you'll find, for example, signals that you would go, why this article seems like nothing like this other article. Why are they both sort of performing in this case? It seems like the content doesn't match. It seems like it doesn't, make any sense. And then AI, to your point, will discover that it does well, and it will find some cosine similarity or something in its vector embedding, to talk AI for a second. But then what you might discover is that, well, it was really a feature. It was the emotion of the content, and it had an emotion which caused people to pay more attention. And it was the more attentiveness in that case that led to a higher likelihood that they saw the ad, and therefore that they were in a mindset maybe to be impacted by it. And so I do think that some of these things end up being understandable. I don't think it's totally just random, but I think, to your point, it's not always obvious. And I think that the way that we optimize things, if it's a human doing it, we're going to make very different decisions than if you ask data to make a decision. In my view, it's not either or, it's and. So you want ultimately human guided systems that do a lot of the job, and then ultimately have human control.
I got one for you guys on this one. Are you familiar with Save the Cat?
I don't think I know Save the Cat. No.
All right. So in screenwriting, so I there was a period in my life when I thought I was going to be a screenwriter. Lasted a glorious 6 months. And if you study screenwriting, you come to understand that all storytelling as we know it in most media is actually a compilation of various formulas. Where this is gonna be a fun one. So all films, basically, well, except for avant-garde, right? If you're into like avant-garde film, they tend to abandon this structure, and that's what makes them avant-garde. But the vast majority of films follow the exact same emotional plan.
Right, rags to riches, and the archetype you're talking, is that right?
I like Stranger Things.
So not an archetype.
Okay.
This is a structure for every story, where there is an introductory act, there is the conflict act, which comes in the second part, there's the all is lost moment, which kicks off the third act of the story, and then there's the resolution, where the characters in the story undergo some sort of change in the final act of the story, the fourth act. And there are tools in screenwriting that screenwriters have come to understand can enact certain emotional responses in the audience that are very reliable. One of these tools is Saving the Cat. So I want you, in every movie you watch going forward now, look for the main character performing some sort of selfless act for an animal or for a helpless creature in the first act.
To show you that they're good?
And what that does is it creates an emotional response in the audience that they now identify with, sympathize with, and feel for the main character. That's part of character development. And you're going to see this now. In fact, you're going to start watching some movies and you're going to see people actually save cats. And you're going to be like, hey, wait, why did this person just save this cat? And it'll be a total throwaway moment. Like, could never see the cat again. Could literally be a 10-second thing. And they'll be like, oh my God, he just saved the cat. And then I remember this one too, all is lost moment. Every movie you watch, look for the all is lost moment. And right before the transformation that happens for the characters for the end of the movie, there will be an all is lost moment. But the reason I bring this up is that before I talk about saving the cat, I promise you, in the vast majority of movies you've seen, people save the cat. And most people don't identify that as, oh, this is happening in every movie I watch. And this is a kind of segue into AI is unearthing patterns that we engage in subconsciously. And we might think that our storytelling is somehow unique or somehow human in some way that is distinct from what can be recognized in patterns. And I'm not sure. I think that this is part of the discussion with like, where do agents fit in? Where do LLMs fit in? How do they play roles in our lives? And it's, well, to what extent are we able to say that, oh, there is this thing that is distinctly human, that is purely, only we can do this thing. And I'm not so sure. Like,
yeah, I mean,
when LLMs have access to the compendium of all knowledge, they can do a lot.
I think that they can do a lot, and I think that there are things that still make us human. The idea of, and by the way, I'm 100% proponent. I built an AI first company. That's what we're doing. I'm all about AI. I'm all about generative AI, agentic AI, etc.
If you're not on Agentic, you're just lost. All the money's moving over.
Yeah, that's what I've heard, that the people that control the industry, I guess, have decided. So we're going to go get in line. But back
I don't know if you realize, Jonah, but agency includes the word agentic right in it.
I know. I noticed that.
That's how you close the deals.
But hold on a second. Hold on. I want to get back to Gareth's point for a second, because this is important. Is there something human that remains human? Seeing behind someone's eyes, as an example, is something that AI maybe you could argue at some point will have some ability to do, but I don't think that we're actually close to that. So I think that AI can imitate. It can follow patterns in a phenomenal way, and it can discover patterns that we don't see. To Adam's earlier point, and it can be shockingly good at all of those things. But I do think there are elements and areas that remain human. The essence of something that sort of seeing hunger or seeing pain or seeing anger or seeing inspiration, not through an identifiable pattern, but just something that because you're there, the energy of that being or person. And so I do think that there are things that are going to still, maybe at some point we'll figure out how to have computers do that. Would be super interesting, but I don't think we're there yet. Right now, I think we're very good at predicting patterns and doing vector embeddings, and I think there's a lot of opportunity to leverage what we are very good at with AI today. And so super excited about how we do those things. But I think the humans are going to still be pretty important in this formula for a long time.
Well, that they're not funny, right? AIs aren't funny. They can't crack jokes. Definitely not spontaneously, and even their prepared jokes are terrible. So for me, like, there's no debate here. Like, that's how I connect. That's what I consider intelligent. Since I was a little kid, I've looked for connections through humor and wanted to be around the people who make me laugh and who get my jokes. So I don't have this experience some people report of AI, of experiencing it as human. I experience it as an amazing document summarizer and detector of patterns. And until they're funny, that's where I'm gonna be.
So I'll give you guys a preview of my article. There's another idea here that was put forward by a computer scientist named John Searle. This is an old, like decades old idea. It's the idea of the Chinese room. And the idea of the Chinese room is that if you were to give a set of instructions, right? When you see characters 1, 2, 3, you respond with characters 4, 5, 6. And you procedurally enact that inside of a system. That system could appear like it knows how to speak Chinese, right? If you put the patterns in place properly, it could appear to be speaking Chinese, but it has no actual comprehension of what it's saying. And this is a widely discussed topic, is, well, what is comprehension, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's that precise idea, Adam. It's that, what it's doing is it's following patterns. It's not understanding the fundamental ideas that it's conveying. It just knows, when I see this sentence, I respond with this sentence.
Yeah, I don't know.
And, I'll take the other side of my own point for a second, just for fun here, which is humans are imitators. That's how we learn also. And so we operate through this concept that Rene Girard really created called mimetic desire. And this idea that we sort of imitate, and in fact, even our desires are imitational. And so we want what other people want. We desire what other people desire was his idea. And I do think that there's, they've done even molecular cell studies where they'll take a cell that was meant for one part of a creature's body and put it somewhere else, and the cell itself will imitate the cells around it and will actually change what it does as a result, and essentially changes what it becomes. And so even at the molecular level, the science is telling us that humans are imitative. And so I don't know where all of that leaves us, but we're going to have an interesting future.
I think it leaves you on Team Gareth, because I am a reductionist, and I think that it can all be broken down into patterns and models. Yeah,
I have a simple question. My third grader said to me this morning, "Isn't AI bad?" She's having this experience that, it ruins things and that it's bad. She watches a lot of YouTube shorts, and I think she's comparing the human generated content and the AI generated content.
Oh, wait, so does she mean like bad like evil, or bad like bad at what it does?
I think she meant like bad for you, like unhealthy food or something. Of course, brain rot is good. So
is brain rot good now?
Yes, brain
when
rot
did
is
that
very
happen?
good. Brain rot is valuable.
Horrible.
No. You're 2 years away from this. We have 4 kids between us, 2 and 2, and mine are a couple of years older than Gareth. So I'm always a little more up on what the kids are.
By the way, can I just verify one thing before we go back to AdTech? Jonah, did you say you have 4 children, but they're between the ages of 10 and 14?
10 and 15. I have a great wife. Yeah. She wanted to be efficient.
There was a period in time when you had 4 children under the age of 5 at once.
I did. In fact, that particular period of time from 2010 to 2015 was when we started Moat, and we're running Moat. And so we had I got married to my great wife, and then we started the company and started having kids, and did all 3 of those things in almost the same time. And then we just kept having kids and kept running the company. And so, yeah, it made for a chaotic, interesting first 5 years of Moat, and my kids lives and married life, etc.
I mean, there's no crisis that I wouldn't trust you in at this point. If you did that then, there's the
funny thing about
an impossible task.
When you have a lot of kids, the interesting thing that happens is that at 4, people ask you very different questions. So when you have 1 kid, everyone's thrilled. When you have 2, they want to know, is it a boy or a girl? And is it the second one a boy or a girl? And how close in age? When you have 3, you often get that, well, I was one of 3. That's sort of a normal number. When you have 4, you start to get into this, like, interesting. Walk me through the thought pattern on, like, I kind of want to, like, better understand what you're doing. Is sort of how does it work to go to the airport? Like, you get sort of logistical questions.
How do you get to the airport?
It's a good one.
Are there economies of scale?
Yeah, it's challenging. It's chaos, and we have 2 dogs. So 4 kids, 2 dogs. We are in the midst of chaos at all times. But luckily, I have my wife is Brazilian, and Brazil is an incredible culture, and so the mentality of Brazil is sort of, at least for the people of Brazil, is sort of up for anything. Like, yeah, all right, let's do it. Like, we'll find a way. We'll navigate it. And so that mentality is very helpful.
Culture, yes, I love it.
Absolutely. They say in Brazil, when there's a traffic jam, and I've seen this, they will get out of the car and just turn the music on and have a party. Because that's the mentality of, like, whatever, like, who cares? You guys are so stressed about everything. Like, enjoy life.
That's the best. I aspire to that, to enjoy what you're doing and get your mind off what you're trying to get to next.
Totally.
Yeah. And then they'll have agents, so there really is nothing to stress about. So, like, yeah, we're going to end up being right this whole time.
I would say I'm on the other side of that one, in the sense that I'm very pro agents. I do believe that we will always find a way to get stressed. And I know that because I see my kids, and I see the things that stress them are different than the things that stressed me when I was a kid, but it's the same patterns. It's just substituting some, different different item, different technology, different element. But I do think there's a lot of human nature that maybe can change, but is really hard to change, and maybe doesn't change.
Yeah, we're hedonic treadmill creatures. We will find the thing that it takes to make us unhappy.
Okay,
like we will
Jonah,
seek it out.
we're gonna get your advice on on an agentic startup pitch that me and Gareth could try to raise some money. But
Let's do it.
We've been really deep in current events, and while we have you on the show in this period that we're deep in current events, and we're not going to get deep into them this week, I just wanted to know, when I was asking you why people like you, and you said not everyone does, and we're talking about the industry, I was thinking how, like, we're competing. Chalice and Mobian compete in the curation space. You know, it's not full.
I was kidding. Everybody likes me, but yeah, go ahead.
But I think you have when I think of all the mentors I have, all the people I look up to in ad tech, you just seem to have the best attitude toward cooperation and competition at the same time. And you seem to just be able to navigate the way that we're essentially all a bunch of 6-year-olds who want praise and recognition and get mad if somebody else gets praise and recognition. And you know that you seem to sort of be able to acknowledge it and float above it at the same time. And that's what I admire about you. So I wanted to see how you think about it this time when seems to be a lot of tension and fighting among ad tech, among people you've known for a long time, and how you see where you stand in it, because I kind of see you above it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is I do think the dynamic of competition on balance is a good thing. I think that it drives you to work hard, it drives you to produce, it drives you to create, to get inspired, and to go, that's interesting. Okay, they're doing that. Wonder if we do this, what would be the effect of that? I also think it's good. I guess I'm a big reductionist too, Gareth. I think I get this from my grandmother on my dad's side, who could distill anything down to its simplest terms. Oh, that's just such and such and such and such. And I kind of think that the same way, and that in the end of the day, if you are in ad tech, you are really fundamentally trying to help two sides, the people buying ads and the people selling ads, be more effective at their jobs. And every company effectively is doing one or both of those things. And so we're all kind of after the same end goal. So whatever the pitch is, however it's being described, in the end of the day, you're either helping a marketer ultimately be more effective. And by the way, that's where all the money comes from in the industry. It's a faucet that only turns from there. So all of the dollars come from one place, and then it spreads out everywhere else. But you're helping a marketer drive better outcomes, make better decisions, be smarter about how they spend their money in order to drive better business results. And at some level, you're also helping the people create content that attracts human beings to it, so that marketers can get in front of those people. And so when I think about competition, I think about what is the problem to be solved, and how can we innovate, how can we do things that are interesting, new, different, leverage the latest technology to do that, but also remember what it is that we're trying to solve in the end of the day. And I think one of the things in ad tech that I've observed, I've been in this industry now 27-ish years, is that oftentimes people forget about the problem they're trying to solve. So they get really excited about the number of queries per second that something does something else with, or they get really excited about the language of a protocol, which can be great and can be very impactful. That's awesome, and I think those types of things can be really critical, but I think they have to be contextualized, and I think they have to be contextualized to ultimately ask the question of how are we helping the constituents of our industry, which are marketers and the people creating content, be more effective at their jobs. And so I don't know that we always do that. I also think that there are folks in this industry who have built reputations to want to do good, to want to work with others, who are long term, who see a life after whatever it is that they're doing in this moment, whatever company they work at, whatever company they're building, et cetera. I've been around long enough that I've seen a lot of people through different stages of their careers. I've seen people be at companies, leave those companies, start their own company, sell that company, do something else, and the people are the part that is the through line there. And so I don't know that everyone always sees that. I think sometimes people just think of people as what role they have right now at a particular company, and I don't think that's the right way to think about it.
Yeah, it's like means to an end, right? Someday if these companies won't exist, then we'll be standing around with each other and we'll think about each other based on what it was like to work with them.
Yeah, and we're all getting old. I hate to say it like this, but I think Adam, you and me are probably older. We're all getting older, and we will sometimes. I've it's not the most popular quote, but I'll say we're all going to die, and so the question is not like, okay, on your deathbed, are you going to look back and be like, thank God for that agentic protocol? It's not that's not going to be the thing. I can promise you that. It's going to be about people, and it's going to be about your family and your kids and other people that you impacted in your life, and so that's what we're all here for, or most of us believe at least that we're here for. And so then the question is, in the work that we do, can we do something that's positive? Can we create impact? And so you're right. I don't mind as much the concept of competition. Great, people should do. And by the way, if it's that easy for anyone to do that, then they should go do it. Then it's not that good of a thing to begin with if anyone can just do it. So I think that's actually a good thing if you have the right belief system on it.
Yeah. So Jonah, I feel like you've done something mythical, which is you started an ad tech company that sold very successfully into the buy side. And for people who work on the sell side,
of a unicorn.
A plus. So for people who are on the sell side, that's a mythical beast, right? Like the notion of selling something at the scale that the Moat did, right, into all of those buyers did. It's beyond my ken. So I'm curious, in your mind, right? You're starting Mobian right now. What are your tips and tricks for like, here's how I discuss things with agencies and marketers? I would love to just hear how you answer that question. It's fascinating to me.
And then we'll do investors.
Yeah, honestly, what I would say, so Moat was a company that sold to both the publishers and advertisers. In fact, we started on the publisher side because we discovered a pain point. We saw the companies at the time around viewability going to publishers saying, hey, you are stealing money from advertisers, and we're here to help them take it back. Was the in-market narrative. They called it, sort of fear selling, and however you want to frame it. We entered that market and said, we don't think that publishers, while viewability is a challenge, we don't think that there's negative intent. We think that they are producing content and they didn't wake up in the morning and think, how many ads can I stick on this page in order to get a view? But like, that wasn't their mindset. Their mindset was, I'm creating content. I want people to consume the content. A lot of them had been in that business for a long time, and they're trying to monetize that content as we were shifting from a offline to online world, and then eventually desktop to mobile, and now of course non-AI to AI. And so I think the way that we thought about it was, someone's being harmed in this market, but there is a problem to be solved as well. So viewability was a real issue, but it was also the way it was being approached didn't make any sense. And so one of the things that we think about is, how are people perceiving these various issues and opportunities, and how are they being presented in market, and is there real pain that is being created? So I guess to answer your question more directly, the way I think about marketers is, first of all, I don't tell them what to think. I listen. I ask them questions and hear from them. What are you trying to solve for? What's your goal? What are the things that are driving your business? I often will go read up on a marketer's business. I'll listen to their earnings call. I'll read a lot of sort of non-advertising stuff about the company to try to understand what are the motivations that are perhaps driving them, so that I can get smarter about what it is that they're trying to solve in the end of the day, and maybe help provide a solution that can advance their goals. And I think in the end of the day, if we can make their job a little bit easier, if we can help advance their goals, then we'll be successful in the long run. And so I think it's less about like, here's my solution, everyone should get on board with it, which I think tends not to be the best way to get people excited, at least on that part of the market. And it's more about, hey, what are you trying to solve for? And what are your goals? And maybe there's some way that we can support that. And if there's not a way that we can support that, then great. That's all fine too. I think it's not about, everything doesn't have to fit into that funnel. And I think it comes back to trying to understand the people on the other side. I think on the publisher side, Gareth, which obviously you know quite well, I actually think it's a similar idea, which is their goal is to create content and create experiences and interact with, they're sort of the front line, right? They're the ones that are actually interacting with the user on the other side of whatever they create. And they're creating the opportunity for a marketer to get in front of that audience. The marketer, by and large, doesn't have that audience inherently. And so they have to have a platform or a publisher that enables them to tell their story in front of that publisher or that creator's audience. And so there's magic to that, to the creation of content that people care about, that people will come visit in whatever form, whether it's in an AI, chat interface or an AI experience or on a mobile device, or doesn't, in my mind, that format doesn't really matter. There's a group of people who are really good at getting consumers, human beings, to pay attention and to want to seek them out. And so they're the ones that are creating an opportunity for marketers to tell their story. And it is the marriage of those two things that create something special. So I think about it as trying to understand, what are they doing? What are they after? How do we help problem solve for them? And, what some sort of insight that I got years ago from Mike Walrath, who is the Right Media CEO, was go have 800 meetings, go meet with everyone in the industry possible, and just learn from them. What are the challenges? What are they trying to solve for? And if there's one, you'll see patterns, and two, you'll discover what are the things that you can potentially build that would be helpful to them. And that's been, the way that we've approached it.
Hey, that's some of the best sales advice ever. I love it. Consultative selling. And B, I want to add something in from the publisher perspective there, because I think this is really interesting. So there's something is pervading the sell side of the industry that I think is helping all of these new narratives to take hold. And that's that what has been done in the past has failed us, right? So like the publishers who are creating that content feel that all of the infrastructure that exists has failed them. They feel it has taken advantage of them and has not paid them their due amounts. The extent to the of the intent behind this, or even the truth behind this, I don't know, but that is the feeling, which is remarkably similar to the political environment, but I'm not going to go there. But I do find it very interesting that part of the appeal of this new agentic stuff for publishers is just that it's different. They're like, don't sell me the things that have already been sold. I don't want to hear from another programmatic vendor, because I've heard from 1,000 of them, and my numbers don't go up. They're not going up. I've closed deals with dozens of you rapscallions, and I'm over it. I'm just out. And that's why I think a lot of the agentic pitches have kind of heard that, and they've kind of been like, oh, well, okay, well, here's something new, right? This is not programmatic anymore. This is automated direct sales. But
no, it's called agentic media, and budgets are moving over.
I mean, it's moving over. That's. But
yeah, I think you said the right thing, Gareth, which is does it drive the bottom line for a publisher? And I do think that that's what they care about. They care, does it improve my yield? Does it increase my business? Does it make me more effective? Can I attract more consumers? Can I attract more advertisers? And can I build my business and accomplish my goals? I think that certainly when something's novel, there's interest in understanding it, and particularly for this moment of AI that we are living in. Everyone wants to understand it, because it's not just in advertising, it's all around us. And so certainly you want to understand, how are these things going to affect my life? Are they going to affect my business? Are they going to affect my job? And that's important. I do think that there is something that is often lost, though, in how some of these things are explained, which I think affects their adoption. And if people's perception is that, this is being presented and it's I better get on board because some ad tech veteran is telling me this is the way of the future, and seems like they've done things that are smart in the past, so I guess I have to do it. I don't know that that's the right formula. Some of these people are certainly very, very smart. But in my mind, the right formula is actually to listen and to try to understand what it is that clients on the sell side, as well as the buy side, are trying to solve for, and leverage the latest and greatest technology to help deliver solutions for them. And I think that it's nuanced, but it's a little bit of a different twist. And so when we go into a publisher and we work with the Washington Post, we work with Time Magazine. Time was our first partner. We work with Newsweek. We work with Fox. We work with Fandom. We work with a lot of publishers. Our approach is to try to understand the pain points that they're seeing. And one of them that has been very real has been, not a question of queries per second, but a question of the monetization of their inventory, and the really demonetization of their inventory, from what we discovered, based on a set of rules that didn't make any sense then, and definitely don't make much sense now. And so, the example that has historically been talked a good amount about was Time Magazine ran an article on a telescope, and the telescope came out and it was the James Webb telescope a couple of years ago, and they put it into space, and they got these incredible images back. And in the article, it talked about a violent death. And the violent death it was talking about in context was about a star that had died. And yet, to this day, literally October 17th, 2025, one of the big verification companies is marking the content as higher risk for violence. And that is just a, mischaracterization, misunderstanding of content and context. The question is, so what? Yes, they get it wrong, and we can maybe wrap our heads around why some of these systems are not so good. Well, the so what is it demonetizes the content. The so what is that it sends a signal, it creates a filter in a DSP that says, don't buy this content because you told me you don't want to be around violence. And so when it is mischaracterized as violence, when it is not, for a reasonable human being to ascertain, the impact of that is pretty significant. And you add that up and you go, well, the impact is not just that one article, the impact is across the entire industry. And so I think the status quo is we have a pretty big industry of content creators, and it doesn't matter whether they're website publishers or magazine publishers or frankly YouTube creators. You have a industry of folks that are creating content, and that content is being filtered through a couple of filters, and those filters by and large don't work that well. They leave a lot to be desired. Let's say it that way. And so as a result, they are demonetizing content. I was on a panel recently at Adweek with Prudential Financial, and they're a client of ours on the advertiser side. And they said, look, we recognized that there was a big problem in our business, in that we were being essentially overblocking content. And the impact of that is not better safe than sorry. The impact of that was that we were overblocking content for the wrong reasons, paying a premium to get access to the content we could then buy. We were missing out on reach and missing out on audience. And by the way, we were still getting bad stuff through the filter. So it's not as if, oh my gosh, but at least it's protected you. It's just like a lockdown thing and it's protected you. No, the dynamics of this thing are such that you're not being protected, unfortunately. So all of the false positives are false negatives too. And so you end up with this situation where you go, if it's bad tech, it's bad tech, or bad methodology, or a combination of bad tech and bad methodology. And where that leaves us is you're overblocking content and you're letting through bad stuff. And that's not what's the point of the service at that point. You're not doing anybody any favors. And so our view, and what Prudential said, is when we sort of reset that view and we leveraged a platform like Mobian, what we're building, they saw, and they publicly talked about this at Adweek, a 50% increase in performance using outcomes that they define as performance by leveraging our capabilities, which include, check the box agentic capabilities, which is autonomous reasoning, finding content that you wouldn't necessarily think of as a human, and then matching their ads with that content. But put the technology aside for a second. Bottom line, they can find more customers. They can drive more business. What's the bottom line for the sell side? With Fox, who is on stage, they can monetize content that was going unmonetized in the passed by these legacy systems. And so I do think that this is one of those moments where if we do it right and we listen to the constituents on both sides, it can actually be better for both of them, which I think is unique in business. Usually when one side wins, the other side doesn't win. And you know, that's oftentimes the case. I think this is a rare situation where advertisers actually can weight. You want to talk sort of ad tech specifics for a second? They can dollar weight down their CPMs because they're basically buying inventory that was being marked as unsafe that is actually safe. And so their CPM actually drops as a result. Their effectiveness, assuming an average effectiveness score on the same inventory, and in some cases we've seen it be better because it's news, as an example, that does tend to perform better because people are paying attention. But even if you assume the same conversion rate, their numbers get better because simply their cost went down. For a publisher, it's actually the other side of it. Their revenue goes up and their RPMs go up because they're taking previously demonetized inventory, so it's trading at a much lower price, and they're starting to raise that number. And so you get this compounding effect for both sides that is incredibly powerful. So when we see people like Prudential who are willing to stand up publicly and say, we've done this and it's working, and we see people like Fox who are willing to publicly stand up and saying, we're going to go a different path on this and leverage Mobian to do it, I get very excited because for me, it is the opportunity to help both sides do something that really drives both of their businesses.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Buy side, sell side. Of course, it's called Mobian after Mobius, which looks like it has two sides, but it's actually one. Same is true of AdTech AdTalk. Same idea. It's buy side, sell side unity, and we love it. But let's talk about Agentic for a second. This week in the industry felt like being in a snow globe that someone was shaking up on purpose, making it everyone as agitated as possible over this idea that, you know, programmatic is the old thing and even AI is the old thing and agentic is the new thing. And while you're talking, it just strikes me the contrast. Like, you're able to identify a problem, talk about the problem, talk about how technology solves it without even telling how the technology works, and talk about how broad the solution is, right? To me, that's a startup pitch, or that's an agency pitch, right? That's the way we tell stories in the industry. And I was deeply unsettled, almost to the point of rage, this week that there's all this hype about agentic media without saying what problem it solves. And I want to ask you, as someone who has a lot of experience with investors, is how does this even get out of the box? How do you get away with, like, there's an important technology and we can't say what problem it solves, but you have to do it? Like, why don't investors put the kibosh on that and saying, if you're not saying what problem it solves, I don't believe you can make money on this? Yeah.
So the problem that agentic solves, in my view, is it's automatic decisioning, automatic reasoning, and it's a more advanced version of that where it can get feedback and then make decisions differently based on that feedback. So the way that we think about it is that we think about generative AI can be leveraged to read and watch content. You said it perfectly, Adam. AI is good at summarizing content. It definitely is. You can feed in a 1,000-page PDF. You can feed in a 10-page article. You can feed in, if you have the right technology, a video, and you can ask questions about that content. And it's pretty decent. Different models are different. You have to build your own technology that does the right sort of putting together the right pieces and some of your own sort of secret sauce on that. But bottom line, you can get there and you can use generative AI to better understand what a piece of content is about, and perhaps better understand that content from different personas, from different perspectives. How would this person look at it versus how might this other person look at it? That's generative AI. And I think that use case for contextual, for brand safety is pretty good and pretty well understood. We're going from a violent death of a star to inherently understanding the context that it was the violent death was not of a human, and so therefore it shouldn't be marked as higher risk. That's Gen AI. Agentic AI says essentially, I'm going to tell you to go out and do some things. I want you to get feedback from those things that you do. And then I want you to decision based on the feedback that you get. And so I'm going to build if you will, a reward system where I'm going to tell you the more of this that you find, the better you are doing. And the less of this other thing that you're finding, the better you're doing, or however you want to think about that. But the idea is you're autonomously, without me having to go in and punch a bunch of buttons, you're able to decision, and you're able to decision with feedback. So the way that a human, I would send you a report and you would look at it and go, I'm going to physically optimize these channels because you're telling me this is not doing well. So I'm going to literally go into the spreadsheet and uncheck them and remove them and re-upload them. The autonomous part of it, the agentic part of it, is that decisioning process that you can give me a bunch of information. You can tell me to look for content that's going to align with what Prudential wants to do. You can have multiple signals that matter. They want to make sure that they're in brand safe environments. They want to make sure that they're driving the right outcomes. They want to match, or what we call pair, the creative with the content that they're on. They want it to sort of make sense and not be kind of shocking to the user. A bunch of different things that they can decide and define. Agentic has the ability to then reason, all right, given all of those inputs, is this what I'm supposed to be targeting? Does this page make sense? And when it presents a new page, it can go through that decision process, and it can also, which is exciting, get feedback on outcomes. So you can also say, and I'm going to tell you what the outcomes are, and I'm going to allow you to simply get smarter as you go. So I think the generative part is great. Summarize what it is. Tell me what how to interpret or read or predict what the content was. The agentic part of it is really about autonomous decisioning. So I think the core technologies are incredibly powerful, and I think the core technologies have very broad applications for the advertising industry, and we're excited to be building in both. Now, I think what happened with this AdCP announcement thing is that I think there's something interesting there, is sort of the period full stop. Yes, we need new languages to communicate with each other. Yes, we can probably do some of these things better. With that said, I'm not close enough to it. I'm getting up to speed to try to better understand it. I've heard some concerns from different folks. I've heard concerns like, is this just Brian's attempt to end around the DSP and ultimately achieve some goal of his? I don't know. In my mind, this is. I wish in some ways it wasn't sort of so tied to this idea of agentic, because I do actually think there's something powerful with agentic, and I don't think it's like that means therefore whatever Brian puts out is the answer. I don't buy into that religion. But my view is that there is something very powerful with agentic, and if we can create a truly open source system to communicate, that's great. I would like to understand, how is it going to work for agencies? How is it going to work for DSPs? How is it going to work for marketers? I didn't see a lot of those people on the initial sort of announcement, and so I'm curious as to why. I'm curious as to, is it helping them? Is it not helping them? In my view, in the end of the day, if it does something that's positive for both sides of the ecosystem, if you will, then great. We'll use it. We'll adopt it. We'll be a part of it. And if it doesn't, if it ends up being this was some game Brian is playing to try to end around DSPs, then great. He can do that, and best of luck. And we'll keep doing what we think we do okay at.
I love it. So what makes sense to me is that it uses the MCP. Like, I have a powerful experience at work that I talked about a few weeks ago that I can actually update on, which is we hooked up Cloud MCP to a bunch of SaaS platforms that we use. And from the day the engineers taught me, I have not logged in to those, which were Confluence and HubSpot. I just asked Claude, what's the status of this project? What's the status of this ticket? What's the status of this sale? It looks it up and comes back. So that to me is like, that's agentic because it's pulling from the APIs, and I don't have any technical view of that. I just asked Claude. And something I mentioned in that is that Slack refused to participate, so I couldn't ask it anything in Slack. And I was starting to ask the engineers, can we replace Slack so that I don't have to search in two places? And since I said that, Slack made a deal with Anthropic, and now Slack is integrated with Claude. And it's lucky for us that they chose the one we were using, but now I don't have to use the Slack search, which doesn't work very well. I can ask Claude, and it works much better. So there's something very powerful here, right? If you have enough gravitational pull to move a giant company like Salesforce that first was like, no, 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 and then turns around and says, well, actually, yes, we need to integrate with this thing and give up on our own, forcing people to search in our own interface. Everyone who has a SaaS platform should pause and say, should I be working on my UI, or should I be working on something that works through MCP and is much more collaborative, right? So I think that's the moment we're at. But yeah, and AdTech, I think the agencies are definitely in the position, besides having their name is almost agentic, but they're the ones who log into tons of SaaS platforms all the time and employ thousands of people who do nothing but log into different SaaS platforms and bring the data together and try to make sense of it. So this is really them to own. And
it's not a coincidence, right? The names being shared is just not a coincidence. Like, this is exactly what agencies do. And I think that's so salient. My whole read on all of this is a lot of people hear the word agentic and hear AI and think it's a really big fancy thing. This is just a way for agents to communicate via API. That's what it is. And every system already has APIs.
Let me just add that's not meaningful to people. Instead of saying it's agents, it just means this is a way for humans to not log into multiple pieces of software.
Yeah, 100. Well, and to let their agents log in. Because right now we already have APIs. Every one of these systems, well, not everyone, but anyone that's worth its salt already has an API. You could already build your own UI to talk to their UI. That is already a thing.
Not Google.
And what does Google not have an API?
They only have APIs in. Google does not have APIs.
Well, and their game API is ancient and a miserable API.
Yeah.
But I think that's bad. I think APIs are almost fundamentally a good. And this is just the next evolution where it's like, oh, okay, instead of having to pay an outsource company, and how many agencies did this? I'm willing to bet a ton of agencies did this. Spent gobs and gobs of money to build a reporting dashboard that pulls from APIs from 10 different systems. I will bet every agency above a certain scale on earth spent money to do this. And this is just
Imperium's invested in like 9
way of doing
that.
Yeah, I mean, look, what I would say is I do think so take the Trade Desk as an example, and we've been public about our partnership with them and some of the success we've had with them with marketers, where an advertiser will create a persona. They'll define whatever they want, and they can include whatever they want in that persona. Here's who I want to reach. We will then autonomously look at content from the Trade Desk, including content that's fresh today that we've never seen before, and a system will automatically look at it and make a decision as to whether it thinks that content meets the persona of that advertiser. And if it does, it will automatically target that ad to it. And so for me, that's a simple version of this. It is agentic, it's automated, it's autonomous decisioning, and it's working, and we're seeing really good results. Is there work to be done on like protocol, which is really just a language? It's like, what does it say in the code when you communicate? Sure, awesome. But to me, the agentic piece is very interesting and very powerful, and I think there's a lot of use cases pulling data. We also leverage APIs autonomously to pull data in from multiple systems. Like, that's not necessarily earth shattering, but is it important? It's very important. And should we have more communication? I think one of the issues with this particular one probably has to do with the personalities of some of the people behind it. And I think that's probably ruffled some feathers. I think that if there were, if it's presented a little bit less as this is the all-knowing beings project, and they are telling you this is where the world is going, there are some people in this industry that don't buy into that belief system.
Yeah, I mean, I think
there's the market a bit. It causes exhaustion. That's my complaint.
I think it's overwhelming some people unnecessarily, because Paul just wrote something really interesting in chat. Shouldn't this be an open source thing? And I think the answer is yes. That's wonderful. It would be so nice if, in fact, I'll take this one step further. It would be so nice if every company in ad tech followed the same API structure. Like, why does everyone build their own custom weird API? And an API is an application programming interface. It's how code talks to code. Every company has their own. It sucks to the point where there are a few companies that have had exits where all that they do is deal with that mess. And like Stack, right? Stack, lovely company. All that Stack did was API stuff all day, every day, so that people didn't have to. So someone could log in and see their report from 3 different systems in one place. And so, yes, it would be wonderful if this is open source. And
by the way, I'm all in favor of the open source. Yeah. I'm all in favor of open source. We were part of the open source project for viewability. I think that open source is great. I think that the idea of making it accessible to everyone is wonderful. And whether does IB Tech Lab or one of these guys take it over and make it truly an industry thing as opposed to some sustainability company. I don't know. That would be interesting. But the idea of an open source project that allows us to communicate better through protocols, I'm on board. It sounds great.
Yeah, and we
How
don't
do
have
we
to
get
talk
rich?
about it as the thing that's going to kill everything. Like, oh my God, we're talking about programmatic companies talking to each other more effectively, not about them stopping being programmatic companies. Like,
Yeah, it doesn't change. It doesn't change any of that. In the end of the day, you have to zoom out. Yeah.
How do we get rich from this? Can we just get Jonah's advice on like what we combine Agentic with? Like, what if there was an Agentic version of Hims or
Agentic Hims?
Uber? Like, what can we combine this technology with and raise a bunch of money?
Well, look, I do think that let's step back for a second. We are in a moment that is not dissimilar. I lived through offline to online, where we went from physical magazines and newspapers, et cetera, to the digitization. They used to talk about the digitization of the world. I lived through the desktop to mobile transition. You're going to have a computer in your pocket, they used to say, and it was the year of mobile for many years. They were right, by the way, about both of those things: the digitization transformation, as well as mobile changing the world in lots of ways, including everything that they predicted, as well as more. I think
Video
that this
calls.
is what's that?
They predicted video calls for a long time, and it's very odd that
Video calls.
technology.
They predicted that. You remember the movie The Net? You want to talk about movies?
Oh, man.
You could order a pizza online, and it would show up at your door. They were right almost about everything, including the bad things. I remember in the late '90s, there was like, people are gonna use this for negative things. They were right about that too. And so, look, I think AI is a gigantic move of the same status of the same size, maybe even bigger. Maybe it's the biggest thing of our lifetime. I don't know. It certainly feels like that at the moment. This technology will find its way into everything that we do. NVIDIA talks about accelerated computing. I do think that we are going to go from sort of non-accelerated computing to accelerated computing, smart computers, if you want to think about it that way, that are able to reason and decision in a much better way. And I think the applications for that will change and affect every single company. And so I do think that this is not simply about, okay, now I can chat and say, like, what inventory do you have available? And it comes back and says, this is the inventory. I think that's a simplistic way to look at it. I do think the question is, how are we going to leverage technology that has some level of autonomy, that can make decisions in a way that maybe a human would have had to before, and we can put some guardrails in place, but it can automate some of those decisions. How can we leverage that technology is very important and very exciting, and I think will absolutely change advertising. I mean, look at Sora too. Anyone that thinks advertising is not going to change based on the video, generative AI video models, it hasn't been paying attention to that, because they are phenomenal. And absolutely are going to change storytelling, how creative is built, ideation, all sorts of things. And so I think that we're just at the beginning of what's possible with that. I think that the question for our industry is really about, how do we solve business problems? One of the things I think that we often forget with new technology is that you still have to solve a use case. You still have to solve a particular issue that someone's having. And so what is the business problem that we're solving with this? Is it publisher yield? And can we show that we can drive up publisher yield? Okay, that's a very interesting use case. How much yield does it drive up? How hard is it to integrate it, et cetera? On the advertiser side, does it drive effectiveness? How do you quantify that? How do you prove that? How expensive is it to integrate, et cetera? And so I think those are what is the current business process? How do we innovate on that? And how do we prove that it works is where we should be spending our time, maybe a little bit less on just the excitement around protocol languages, but like, all good. I'm sort of indifferent on it. Like, if everyone adopts whatever the protocol language is, we built a pre-bid module as an example. I think it's pretty cool. It's open source. You can download it. You can use our pre-bid module. a publisher can autonomously discover what we think their content is classified as, and we transparently share that data with them, and it's an open source module that they can install. I think that's really cool. And I didn't create the pre-bid project. A bunch of other smart people did. And because it got used, we were able to leverage it. That's kind of how I think about this one as well.
That's great. The problem I'd like to solve, and you could tell me if Agentic could apply, is that big faucet of money you talked about, the buyers, they don't have time to learn the difference. They don't have the ability to tell hype from the real thing. They don't review case studies, and when they don't always even know their problems or that they're solvable.
Well,
so, yeah,
I would give the buy side a little bit more credit than that. Actually, I think that they do understand their problems. Their problems aren't always our problems as an industry, and so I think that we sometimes think like, don't you want to have a QPS that's faster? And they're like, no, that is not the main thing that I wake up thinking about. I don't know what you're talking about, and it doesn't mean anything to me. And so I think that we are sometimes try to create problems for them or tell them that there's a problem that they're not having. I actually think they are reticent on certain things in our industry, as they should be, because they have to actually deliver a product. They have to deliver supply chain management. They have to deliver all sorts of things.
I'm just saying their risk assessment is not great. Like if I say you could deliver more outcomes for less money, I think they view the risk of trying something as too high. They misassess that risk, or maybe they correctly assess that risk because they know when they pass this down to their teams, a lot of things can happen and a lot of problems could create.
Yeah. The ad tech pitch is always that, though. It's always, as we talked about in the beginning, it's always we can make you more efficient. Like that is the pitch. Like when I tell people about what we do, I usually say, and it's the same thing every other measurement company does or should be doing, which is we help you drive more effective outcomes. The question is not, are we attempting to do that? The question is, how are we doing that? Are we doing it in a way that integrates in a thoughtful way to their system? How do we think about enterprise problems? Enterprise problems are very different than, sort of a startup's problems. Enterprise problems have to do with things like security and what are other priorities and resourcing and all sorts of other issues that are absolutely critical to business success. And so I think you have to sort of wrap your head around business process, and the problem that we're solving is not just the theoretical problem, but we also have a tactical problem as well.
Yeah, that's good advice. As always, Jonah.
60% of the time,
last word this week?
it works every time.
Love that piece of advice. It's a very, very good one. Because on the publisher side, right, I run into the same issues. So I sell things to publishers all the time. Well, I have some free things and some things that cost money. And more often than not, the thing that keeps a publisher from doing it is tactical, not strategic. Like that is the bar. The bar that you are up against is always tactical. So yeah, I think it's wonderful. I also think that like agentic stuff sounds great. Like it sounds lovely. This sounds wonderful. Because my golden goose, right? Like I think I've built software that adds real value to the value chain. And on the topic of tactical, the thing that keeps me from being used by everyone on Earth is my ability to get salespeople in a market and my ability to integrate. If Agentic can solve that for me as an actual value add piece of software, that's awesome. Because in theory, I could just insert myself into this agentic like consciousness, and it will just send me business, right? Like,
by the way, there are people. I don't know if you know the agency PMG down in Dallas, but they launched something called a marketplace in its early days. But it's essentially exactly that idea that you distill the work process down to something that is very easy for partners to plug into. And so you can come in and say, okay, I'm a partner in this, contextual space or in that space. This is where I make sense to plug in. And they essentially have handled the rest of it. So the workflow, contracting, et cetera. And so I do think that those types of ideas are very, very positive. And if we can remove some of the friction so that we can democratize technology, so we can all test, what it should be, if I'm a marketer, yeah, I'll test all of your technologies. Just put them in the system. It'll automatically run them, whichever one does well. based on what I define as what well means, it will use more of, and the ones that don't, we'll use less of, and that absolutely should be the future. We have some work to do as an industry to get there, but there are people doing good work to try to put those pieces together. So I think it's an admirable goal in the end of the day, but we'll see.
I love that. That would be amazing.
Jonah, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you, Jonah.
I wish we could do another hour. I hope you'll come back and do it again sometime.
Anytime. Thank you for having me. I'm honored that you asked.
Thank you. Maldo, take us out.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.